At 72 years old, Marielle Whitlock did something she never imagined possible. She ran away from home. It was just past midnight. Snow was falling on Maple Avenue. Her hands were trembling, but not from the cold. She was holding a small suitcase. Beside her stood her husband, Arthur, 75, leaning on his cane. At their feet, an old golden retriever named Scout looked up with quiet, knowing eyes. They did not say a word. They locked the back door behind them. They left the house key on the kitchen counter, and they disappeared into the snow. Now ask yourself this: what could push a 72-year-old grandmother, a woman who had baked Sunday dinners for 47 years, who had raised 3 children in that same kitchen, who had never once raised her voice? What could push her to vanish into the night with nothing but a suitcase and a dog? The answer is something Marielle overheard 3 hours earlier. Something whispered behind a closed door. Something so cold, so calculated that it shattered every illusion she still had about her own family. This is the story of the night a grandmother chose her own dignity over her own blood. And what she discovered in the weeks that followed will change the way you see family forever. Stay with me. The dough was warm under her hands. 4 in the morning, Cedar Hollow asleep. The little kitchen above Pearl's diner glowing soft amber from a single bulb in the ceiling. Marielle Whitlock pressed her thumbs into the dough, folded it, pressed again. 47 years she had done this. The same motion, the same prayer in her chest, the same flower under her wedding ring, except now everything was different. Because she was 72 years old, and 6 months ago she had run away from home. She closed her eyes. She could still see the snow on Maple Avenue, could still feel Arthur's hand trembling in hers, could still hear Scout's old paws padding softly behind them through the dark. She breathed in, the smell of yeast, the smell of beginning again, and the radio in the corner whispered an old song her mother used to hum while peeling apples in 1964. Marielle smiled, a small, tired, defiant smile. Then she began to remember. The Whitlock house stood on Maple Avenue for 47 years, a Victorian. White clapboard, gingerbread trim painted the color of pale sage. A wraparound porch where every child on the block had eaten popsicles in summer. Arthur had built that porch with his own 2 hands. Marielle had filled the rooms. There was a window seat in the front parlor where she had nursed all 3 of her babies. There was a kitchen with a checkered linoleum floor and a pantry that smelled forever of cinnamon. There was a back garden where Marielle grew tomatoes the size of softballs, and a small white birdhouse Arthur had built one Saturday in 1981. 3 children grew up under that roof. Calvin first, then Bennett, then Cordelia. Calvin was the gentle one, the one who pressed flowers in books, the one who slept with his stuffed elephant until he was 12, the one who joined the service at 19 because his father had served and his grandfather had served, the one whose folded flag now lived on the mantle. 10 years ago, a transport went down over mountains halfway around the world. 2 men in uniform came to the door on a Tuesday morning. Marielle was making toast. She remembered the toast. She remembered every detail of that toast. The way it was burning. The way she did not smell it. The way Arthur sat down on the bottom stair and held the folded flag in his hands and made no sound at all for 41 minutes. Then he made a sound. And it was the worst sound Marielle had ever heard a human being make. She stopped sleeping for 6 months. Then she started again. Because Arthur needed her. Because Bennett needed her. Because Cordelia was about to leave for college and needed her mother to be a mother again. So Marielle learned what every grieving woman learns. You do not get over it. You only get on with it. Cordelia left next. Not to dying. Just a distance. She met a man at a conference in Boston. Then took a job in Seattle. Then a husband. Then a baby. Then a different city. then another, then a position with an international firm, and a transfer to somewhere far enough that the time difference made phone calls feel like long-distance shouting across decades. The phone calls grew thinner. Sunday calls became monthly calls. Monthly calls became holiday calls. Holiday calls became nothing at all. Mariel told herself it was normal. Children grow up. Children move on. Children build their own kitchens with their own warm bowls of dough. She told herself this, but she also kept Cordelia's old bedroom exactly the same. The pink curtains, the shelf of paperbacks, the little vanity with the tarnished silver hand mirror, just in case. Arthur fell from the roof on a Tuesday in March. He had insisted on cleaning the gutters himself because he was Arthur Whitlock, because he was 75 and proud, because asking for help was something other men did. Mariel was in the kitchen when she heard the sound. A thud, then silence, then a small grunt, like a man trying very hard not to admit he was hurt. She ran outside, bare feet on cold grass, apron still tied around her waist. Arthur was lying on his side in the flower bed. His face was the color of dishwater. His hip was at an angle a hip should never be at. "Don't move," she whispered. "I'm fine." "Arthur." "I said I'm fine." But his eyes were wet, and his hand was shaking, and his voice when it came out was smaller than she had ever heard it. The ambulance took 11 minutes. The surgery took 6 hours. The bill took everything. $45,000. That was the number on the page Mariel held in her kitchen 2 weeks later. $45,000 for one broken hip, one metal plate, 8 screws, 3 nights in a hospital that smelled of bleach and grief. Medicare paid half. Their supplemental insurance had lapsed the month before, because the premiums had climbed, because the Social Security check had not, because that was the kind of math old age was made of in America. Mariel set the bill on the table. She did not cry. She had learned a long time ago that crying did not lower numbers. 3 days later, Bennett came over. He was their oldest now, 46, sharp jawline, his father's hands, his mother's eyes, a custom furniture business he had built from nothing in a leased workshop on the edge of town. He sat at the kitchen table. He stared at his coffee. He did not drink it. "Mom," he said. "What is it, sweetheart?" "The shop." "What about the shop?" "Orders are gone. Luxury spending dried up. The bank sent a notice." She waited. "2 notices," he said. "On the workshop and the house." Mariel set down her dish towel. Arthur was upstairs, healing, hobbling, pretending the pain pills weren't fooling anyone. She looked at her son. She looked at the medical bill on the counter. She thought of June. 5 years old. Silas. 4. 2 grandchildren who would lose the only home they had ever known. And Mariel Whitlock, 72 years old, made a decision in 11 seconds that would change the next half of her life. "We'll sell the house," she said. "Mom." "We'll sell it." "Mom, no." "Bennett." She looked at him with a softness so steady it almost broke him. "Listen to me. A house is wood. A house is paint. A house is 47 years of memory in a place. But the memory we take with us, the house we leave behind." He started crying. She did not. She did not cry that day at all. They sold the house in 8 weeks. A young couple bought it. They had 2 children. They wanted to put a swing set in the backyard where Calvin had once buried his pet hamster under a tomato plant. Mariel walked through every room one last time. She touched the doorframe where Arthur had marked the children's heights in pencil. June 4th, 1979. Calvin, 3 feet 7. April 12th, 1983. Bennett, 3 feet 11. October 9th, 1987. Cordelia, 3 feet 2. She did not erase the marks. The new family said they would leave them. She believed them, because believing was sometimes the only thing she had left. The day they packed the truck was the day she finally cried. She was wrapping her grandmother's teapot in newspaper when her hand stopped working. Just stopped, like the breaker in the basement had been flipped. The teapot trembled. Her shoulders shook. Arthur found her sitting on the floor. He eased himself down beside her. Slow, careful. His hip was still healing. He did not speak for a long minute. Then he said, "We made enough memories here to fill 3 lifetimes." She nodded. "But Marielle." "Yes. The memories aren't in the walls." She closed her eyes. "They're in us." She leaned into his shoulder. Her tears soaked his flannel shirt. Scout came over and laid his big golden head in her lap. Outside, a moving truck idled by the curb. Above them, the maple in the front yard rained yellow leaves like a slow goodbye. She wept until she was empty. Then she got up, wiped her face, and wrapped the next dish, because that was what women like Marielle Whitlock did. Bennett's house on Oak Ridge Drive had 5 bedrooms. 5, plus a 3-car garage, plus a finished basement, plus a yard with a swimming pool and a swing set, and a treehouse, and a small white shed Sloan called the garden studio, even though no one had ever seen her plant anything in it. By any measure, there was room. By any measure. Sloan led Marielle and Arthur up the stairs on their first night, past the master suite, past June's room with the unicorn wallpaper, past Silas's room with the rocket ship lamp, past the guest bath, to a small room at the end of the hall. "Here we are," Sloan said. Bright, polished, her smile pinned in place like a brooch. A queen bed, a small dresser, a single window, just enough floor space between the bed and the wall to walk sideways. "It's perfect," Marielle said, because what else was she going to say? The first dinner was lovely, lemon chicken, Marielle's favorite. Sloan had even bought flowers. "We're so grateful you're here," she said over the candles. June and Silas climbed into Arthur's lap and asked him to tell them about the big maple tree on Maple Avenue. He told them. They laughed. June kissed his cheek. Sloan watched. She kept smiling, but something in her eyes did not smile. The first thing to go was the chair, Marielle's reading chair, the wingback the color of old roses, the one Arthur had reupholstered for her 30th anniversary, the one she had nursed all 3 children in. She came downstairs on the 3rd morning, and it was gone. "Oh," Sloan said, breezing past with a yoga mat slung over her shoulder. "I moved it to the basement. We're getting a new entertainment center. The chair just didn't fit the aesthetic." "Of course," Marielle said. The basement was unfinished. The basement was cold. The basement was where forgotten things went to be forgotten. She did not say anything else. Then it was the cookbook, Marielle's recipe binder, 3 rings, handwritten cards stuffed inside plastic sleeves, her mother's pound cake, her grandmother's lemon meringue, Calvin's favorite cinnamon rolls, Cordelia's birthday cake recipe, Bennett's wedding cake, 47 years of a woman's life. In one binder. It vanished on a Thursday. Marielle looked everywhere. Pantry, bookshelf, garage, basement. Finally, she asked. Sloan was at the kitchen island, slicing cucumber for a smoothie. "Oh, that old thing, I thought it was junk. I think it might be in the garage. Or maybe I tossed it. I cleaned out a lot last week." She did not look up. She just kept slicing. Slice, slice, slice. Marielle went out to the garage. It was in the recycling bin, under a pile of flattened cardboard. 47 years of a woman's handwriting, pressed against the side of a cereal box. She brought it inside, wiped it clean, hid it under the bed. She did not tell Arthur, because Arthur was already breaking. The comments started at dinner. Small ones, light ones, the kind of comments you could almost miss, the kind a polite woman would not address. Arthur, of course, you can have seconds, though my nutritionist did mention men your age really should reduce portions. Slow metabolism and all. Marielle. I switched us all to almond milk. I read regular dairy can accelerate memory issues in seniors. Mom, are you sure you took your pill this morning? I just want to be careful. Dad, did you remember to lock the side door? Sometimes you forget. Always with a smile. Always with concern. Always in front of someone. A neighbor. A friend. Bennett. Bennett would shift in his chair. Bennett would not look up. Bennett would say, Sloan, come on, they're fine. And Sloan would say, I'm just thinking of their health, sweetheart. And Bennett would say nothing more, because Bennett had been saying nothing more for years. Marielle had noticed it the first night they sat at that dinner table. The way her son's shoulders rounded forward when Sloan spoke. The way he laughed a beat too late. The way his eyes flicked to her face before he answered any question, as if checking for permission. Her boy. Her Bennett. The boy who had climbed every tree on Maple Avenue. The boy who had stood up to bullies. The boy who had brought home stray cats. Where had that boy gone? She wanted to ask him. She wanted to grip his shoulders and shake him and say, Where are you, Bennett? Where is my son? But she did not, because mothers of grown men learn a hard lesson. You can no longer reach inside and pull out the boy you raised. He has to come back on his own, or he never comes back at all. The grandchildren were the only light. June was 5, dark braids, brown eyes the size of saucers, a laugh that came from her belly. Silas was 4, quiet, watchful, the kind of child who carried small treasures in his pockets, a stone, a bottle cap, a feather. They came into Marielle and Arthur's room every morning before school, climbed onto the bed, demanded stories, demanded songs. Grandpa, will you build me a birdhouse? Grandma, can we bake cookies? The ones with faces. Marielle would say yes. Marielle always said yes. She would bring them downstairs while Sloan was still in the shower. She would let them crack eggs into a bowl. She would let Silas hold the wooden spoon with both hands. She would let June lick batter off her finger and laugh when she got it on her nose. Those mornings were 45 minutes long. Those mornings were the only 45 minutes when Marielle felt like a grandmother and not an inconvenience. Then, one afternoon, June climbed into her lap on the porch swing. Just the two of them. Sloan and Silas and Bennett were inside. June leaned her head against Marielle's shoulder. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said it. Grandma. Yes, sweetheart. Why doesn't Mom like you? Marielle did not breathe for 3 seconds. She kissed the top of her granddaughter's head. Sweetheart, she said softly. Why do you say that? Because she makes faces. When you hug me. When you read me stories. When you make my breakfast. She makes the face I make when I have to eat broccoli. Marielle closed her eyes. She held June a little tighter. Maybe, she whispered, your mom is just tired. June thought about this. Then she said, no, she's not tired. She just doesn't like you. And Marielle understood with the awful clarity of a 5-year-old's honesty that her grandchild had seen what she herself had not yet allowed herself to see. The notebook was in a drawer. It was a Tuesday. Just past 2 in the afternoon. Sloane was at her yoga class. Bennett was at work. The children were at school. The house was empty except for Marielle and Scout. Marielle had gone into the master bedroom to retrieve a winter coat Sloane had promised to lend her. The closet was huge. Walk-in, lit by a small chandelier because of course it was. She was reaching for the coat when she knocked something off the dresser. A small notebook. Leather. Black. The kind a person buys when they want to feel serious about something. It fell open on the floor. Marielle bent to pick it up. She did not mean to read it, but her own name was written across the top of the page. Marielle. Then below it in tidy, precise handwriting, October 3rd. Forgot to take blood pressure medication. Found pills still in dispenser at 7 p.m. October 7th. Left burner on. Caught at 11 minutes. Pot scorched. October 14th. Confused which grandchild was. Which when arriving home from school. Called Silas, Calvin. Recovered in 3 seconds but confusion observed. October 22nd. Watered houseplants twice in 1 day. Floor damp. October 30th. Forgot daughter's name during phone call. Took 12 seconds to recall. There were dates going back 6 months. 6 months of small mistakes. The kind every person makes. The kind no one writes down, unless someone is building a case. Marielle turned the page. Then she turned to a second list. This one was Arthur. September 28th. Forgot to lock front door. Door found unlocked in morning. October 1st. Said he had taken his medication. Pills still in bottle. October 9th. Cried during evening news. Refused to explain. Possible depression onset. October 17th. Said he wanted to go home. Could not remember he was at home. The last one was a lie. Arthur had never said that. Marielle knew, because Marielle was beside Arthur every hour of every day. Some of the other entries were also wrong. The burner had been on for 2 minutes, not 11. She had called Silas Calvin once briefly, because she had been startled by how much Silas had begun to resemble her dead son. She had not called him Calvin in confusion. She had called him Calvin in love. But here, on this page, in neat, precise handwriting, it read like dementia. It read like a case file. It read like the kind of document a lawyer would carry into a courtroom. She closed the notebook. Her hands were shaking. She put it back, exactly where it had been, even down to the angle. She walked out of the closet. She walked down the hall. She walked into the guest room. And she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for a long, long time. Scout came in, laid his old golden head in her lap. He looked up at her with eyes that were rheumy with cataracts and full of love. "Something is wrong," she whispered to him. "Something is very wrong." She did not tell Arthur that night. She did not tell anyone. She just watched. She watched for 2 weeks. She watched Sloane write in the notebook after every meal. A small motion. A flick of the wrist. A pen produced from the apron pocket. A line added while Bennett looked at his phone. She watched her own mail. Some envelopes were opened, resealed badly. Just badly enough to see. A letter from her old quilting group. A pension statement. A flyer from the library. She watched the pills, the ones in her own dispenser and Arthur's. A few would go missing every few days, from the back of the dispenser, where she would not check. She watched Bennett. She watched the way he looked through her at dinner, the way he pretended not to see Sloane writing, the way his face emptied of color when his wife laughed. And she watched herself. She watched herself growing smaller in this house, walking on her toes, whispering, apologizing for sounds she had not made. She watched her own light going out. And one night, lying beside Arthur in the dark, listening to him breathe, the slow, shallow breath of a man whose body was failing him a little more. Each year, Marielle Whitlock had a thought she had never had before. If I do not stop this, I will die in this house. Not from age, from shame. 2 weeks later, she heard the phone call. It was a Thursday, late, almost midnight. Arthur was asleep beside her. Scout was snoring at the foot of the bed. Outside, an October wind was scraping its fingers against the shutters. Marielle could not sleep. She slipped out of bed for a glass of water. Bare feet on the cold hallway floor. She paused at the top of the stairs because she heard a voice. Sloane, talking to someone. Marielle froze. She knelt down. She put her ear to the heating vent in the floor, and she listened. Yes, of course I understand that, Elliot. Elliot. Marielle knew that name. Dr. Elliot Mercer. Arthur and Marielle's primary care physician. The one Bennett had insisted they switch to after the move. He's wonderful, Mom. He really gets older patients. No, I'm telling you, the documentation is solid. I've been logging for 6 months. Memory lapses. Medication confusion. 2 episodes of mild incontinence I, observed. Nothing definitive yet, but enough for a pattern. A long pause. Then Sloane laughed. A soft laugh. The kind women use when they want to be charming on the phone. Right, exactly. We don't need a full diagnosis. We just need enough for a competency hearing. The judge will see the pattern. You provide the medical opinion. The lawyer files. We're talking 60 days at the outside. Marielle's hand began to shake against the floorboards. The financial piece is already mapped. Once Bennett and I are appointed as guardians, the Social Security checks come to our address. The pension goes to the joint trust. The insurance from the house sale, the supplemental, all of it. Roughly $900,000 once you factor in the estate. Marielle could not breathe. $900,000. That was every dollar she and Arthur had ever earned, ever saved, ever sacrificed for. The house money, the pension Arthur had paid into for 41 years, the insurance Calvin's death had left them, the savings they had built nickel by nickel through the lean years, $900,000, the price tag on her dignity. She kept listening. Bennett. Sloane's voice was lighter now. Bennett doesn't know the full plan. He thinks it's about safety, about moving them to a nice facility where they'll be looked after. That's the angle. That's what I'm telling him. He doesn't need to know about the trust restructure until later. Pause. No, he won't push back. He hasn't pushed back on anything in 8 years. Why would he start now? A small laugh. Marielle felt sick. Elliot, listen. Sunrise Hollow. The facility over on the county line. They have a memory care wing. Locked. Pretty grounds. They won't be able to leave. We get them admitted, the guardianship gets rubber stamped within 90 days. After that, it's just paperwork. Pause. Marielle. She suspects nothing. She's 72 and she trusts everyone. That's the beauty of women her generation. They were raised to never make a fuss. Marielle pressed her hand against her mouth because something was rising in her chest, something hot, something she had not felt in 50 years. Rage, not sadness, not fear, not hurt. Rage, pure and ancient and womanly, the kind that built barns and birthed children and buried sons and kept going, the kind Sloane had badly, terribly, fatally underestimated. The phone call ended. A door closed somewhere downstairs. Marielle stayed kneeling on the floor for another full minute. She did not move. She did not cry. She breathed in, out, in, out. the way her own mother had taught her to breathe through labor. Then she got up. She walked back to the bedroom. She sat down beside Arthur. She put her hand on his shoulder. "Arthur." He stirred. "Mariel, wake up. What is it? Listen to me." He opened his eyes. The lamp was off. The room was dark, but she could see the shape of him. The man she had married 51 years ago. The man whose hip was held together by 8 screws. The man whose hands had built fences and cradles and a porch on Maple Avenue. "Arthur, what's wrong, sweetheart? They're going to take everything." He sat up, slowly. His knees cracked. "What?" she told him. Every word. The notebook, the doctor, the competency hearing, the pension, the 900,000, Sunrise Hollow, the locked wing. Arthur did not speak while she spoke. When she was done, he was silent for a long time. Then he said one word. "How?" She knew what he meant. How could their own boy let this happen? She did not have an answer. She put her hand on his. "Arthur?" "Yes. We leave." He turned his face toward her in the dark. "Mariel." "Soon." "Mariel, we can't. Not tonight. We need 3 days. We need to gather what little we have. We need to move what money we can. We need to say goodbye. To Bennett. To the children." "How?" "Quietly. They cannot know we are leaving. They are too small to keep a secret. But they will remember us. I will make sure they remember us." Arthur was crying now. Not loud, just steady, the way a strong man cries when he has held it in for too long. "Mariel." "Yes, Arthur." "Where will we go?" "I don't know yet. With what?" "Whatever we can carry." "And after that?" She looked at him. She took both his hands. She held them like they were something precious. Because they were. Because his hands had built her life. Because his hands had wiped her tears at 3 funerals. Because his hands had cradled 3 babies and reupholstered 1 wingback chair and dug 1 small grave for a hamster under a tomato plant. "Arthur." "Yes. I do not know what comes after." "Mariel." "I only know what does not come after. And what does not come after is a locked door at Sunrise Hollow. And what does not come after is that woman cashing my pension. And what does not come after is dying in a room that smells of bleach, with a stranger holding my hand." Arthur closed his eyes. A long breath. A slow nod. "All right, Mariel. All right. All right." She kissed his forehead. Then she got up, walked to the closet, pulled down the small suitcase they had used on their honeymoon in 1973, set it on the floor. She looked at it. She looked at her sleeping husband. She looked at Scout's soft chest rising and falling at the foot of the bed. And Mariel Whitlock, 72 years old, mother of 3, grandmother of 2, widow of 1 son, wife of 1 man, woman of 47 years on Maple Avenue, made a quiet promise to herself. She would not be a footnote in someone else's plan. She would not be a name in a notebook. She would not be a checkbox on a competency form. She had given everything. To Arthur, to her children, to this country that had taken her boy, to a daughter-in-law who had taken her chair, her cookbook, her dignity, and was now coming for her pension. She had given, and given, and given. But she would not give this. Whoever Sloan thought she was dealing with. She was wrong. Outside, the October wind was rising. Leaves skittered across the roof. Somewhere down the block, a dog was barking at a stranger. Mariel reached for the suitcase. She unzipped it. She began to pack. 3 days. That was all Mariel Whitlock gave herself to dismantle a life and disappear. 3 days to pack. 3 days to pretend. 3 days to look her son in the eye over Sunday breakfast and not scream into her coffee cup. She woke at 4 every morning, before the house, before the world, before her own fear could catch up with her. She made lists in her head, because she could not write them down, because Sloane went through drawers, because Sloane went through pockets, because Sloane went through everything. So Mariel kept the list in her mind: cash, pills, photographs, documents, a small wooden box of Calvin's letters, her grandmother's recipe binder, the suitcase from 1973, and nothing else, because nothing else mattered. Day 1, she went to the library. She had been tutoring children there for almost 2 years. Reading hour. Tuesdays and Saturdays. The librarian, a soft, round woman named Edith, paid her in cash. $40 a session. Slipped into an envelope. Slid across the counter with a wink. Mariel had been saving every dollar. Sloane did not know about the library. Sloane thought Mariel went there to escape. Sloane was not wrong about that. But Sloane was wrong about the envelope. The envelope held $1,120. It was hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of Anna Karenina, on the 3rd shelf from the top in the fiction section, because no one in Bennett's house had read a Russian novel in their lives. Mariel slipped the book out, slipped the envelope into her purse, slipped the book back. Edith was at the front desk. "Mariel." "Edith? You all right?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." Mariel smiled, the kind of smile women her age have perfected. "I'm fine." Edith looked at her for a long second. Then she nodded, the way old women nod at each other when they understand more than they say. "You take care of yourself, Mariel." "I will." "You hear me?" "I hear you." And Mariel walked out into the autumn light and never went back. Day 2, she sold the earrings. Pearl studs, white gold, a small diamond at the back of each one. Her mother had given them to her on her wedding day in 1973. Mariel had worn them at 3 baptisms, 1 graduation, 2 funerals, and every Christmas Eve. She took them to a small jewelry store off Main, the kind of place that did not ask too many questions. The owner was a thin man with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked at the earrings. He looked at Mariel. He looked at her hands, because old women who sell their mother's earrings have a particular look about their hands, a tightness around the knuckles, a way of holding the velvet box like they are carrying a small coffin. "These are nice," he said. "Yes." "You sure?" "I'm sure." "They mean something." She did not answer. He sighed. "I can give you 600. They're worth 8, but I won't sell them for more than 7, and I have to make something. 600 is fine." "You want cash?" "I want cash." He counted it out. 20s, crisp. He slid it across the counter. She put it in her purse. She walked outside. She sat in her car in the parking lot, and she did not cry for 45 seconds. Then she did. Because some things you do not get to keep, and some things you sell, and the difference between them is a very thin line drawn in the dust by women who have run out of other choices. She wiped her face. She started the car. She drove home. Day 3 was for the children. Mariel woke before dawn. She crept into the kitchen. She baked. 2 batches. The first was a tin of small frosted cookies, round, with faces piped onto them in yellow icing. June's favorite. The kind they made together on Saturdays, when Sloane was at her spin class. Mariel pressed the eyes in with the back of a chopstick. Each one looked a little bit like Calvin had as a baby. She wrote a note, folded it small, tucked it under the lid of the tin. My darling June, remember that Grandma loves you, always, across any distance, across any door, across any winter. You will know me by the cookies, and by the dough you can roll yourself, and by the songs I sang you. Love is a recipe, my sweet girl, and you will always have mine. She closed the tin. The second was harder. Arthur came down the stairs, quietly. He was still moving slowly from the hip. He stood behind her at the counter. He did not speak. He just put his hand on her shoulder. She nodded. He sat at the kitchen table. He took a small block of pine from his pocket, the kind he had been hiding in the basement for weeks. He began to carve, a bird, wings tucked, feathers small and precise, the kind of bird Silas had pointed at one morning on the porch and said, "Grandpa, what is that one called?" Arthur had said, "That is a chickadee. He is small. He is brave. He stays through the winter." Silas had thought about this. Then he had said, "I want to be a chickadee." Arthur had not stopped thinking about it for 3 weeks. Now he was carving one. His hands shook a little. The arthritis was bad in the cold. The chisel slipped once. He almost cut his thumb. He bit his lip and kept going. 2 hours later, a small wooden chickadee sat on the kitchen table. It was beautiful. Arthur set down the chisel. He looked at Marielle. Tears were running down his face. She came around the table. She put her arms around his shoulders. She pressed her cheek against the top of his head. "He will keep it forever," she whispered. "I know. He will tell his children about it. I know. He will remember us. I hope so, Marielle. He will." The night came too fast. Marielle and Arthur went to bed at the usual time, said goodnight to Bennett, said goodnight to Sloane, read June a story about a rabbit, tucked Silas in with the rocket ship lamp on dim. They closed their door. They sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. They waited. Until 11. Until 11:30. Until midnight. Until the house was silent. Until the only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator 2 floors below, and the wind pushing leaves across the driveway. Then Marielle stood up. She put on her warmest coat, the one she had bought 30 years ago at a department store that no longer existed. Wool, deep green, with a small velvet collar. Arthur put on his flannel and his thick boots, and his old veteran's cap. They picked up the 2 suitcases they had hidden under the bed. They picked up Scout's leash. He had been sleeping. He raised his head. He looked at them. He knew. Some dogs know. He stood up, stretched, came to the door. Marielle knelt down. She kissed the top of his soft golden head. "Thank you for staying with us, old boy." He licked her chin. Then she stood up. She opened the bedroom door, and the 3 of them stepped out into the dark hallway. They paused outside June's room. Marielle set the cookie tin on the small table by the door. She did not go in, because if she went in, she would not come out, because she would lay down next to her granddaughter and breathe in her hair and not be able to leave. She placed her palm flat against the closed door. "I love you, my June." She moved on. They paused outside Silas's room. Arthur knelt down, slow, his hip protesting. He opened the door an inch. Silas was asleep on his side, thumb in his mouth, the rocket ship lamp glowing soft blue. The covers half off the bed because that was Silas. That was always Silas, restless even in dreams. Arthur placed the wooden chickadee on the small bedside table, next to the rocket ship. He stared at his grandson for 10 long seconds. Then he closed the door. He put his hand against it. He did not speak. He could not. Marielle touched his back, gently. He nodded once. He stood up. They walked down the stairs together. The stairs creaked once. Halfway down, the third step from the bottom, the one that had always creaked, the one that had given Bennett away when he had snuck out of his own childhood home at 16 to meet a girl. They froze. The house held its breath. Nothing. They kept going. In the kitchen, Marielle walked to the counter. She took the front door key off her keychain. She set it on the granite. A small silver thing, worth nothing, worth everything. She left it there, because she would not be coming back, because that was the only goodbye she had left to give. Arthur opened the side door. The cold air rushed in, sharp, clean, smelling of wet leaves and someone's chimney smoke 3 houses down. Scout went out first, then Arthur, then Marielle. She did not look back until she was 3 steps down the driveway, until her boots had crunched twice on the frost, until the door was closed behind them. Then she turned, just once, just for a second, and she looked up at the dark window of her granddaughter's room. "Goodbye, my loves," she whispered, and she walked away. The bus terminal at 2 in the morning was a place from another world. Fluorescent lights buzzing too loud, tile floor sticky in places, a vending machine humming, a man asleep with his face pressed to the window, a young woman crying quietly into a baby blanket. Marielle and Arthur found seats on a plastic bench in the corner. They set the suitcases between them, like a small wall. Scout lay down at their feet. Arthur was breathing fast. The walk to the bus stop had been 6 blocks. His hip was hurting. His hand was trembling. Marielle took out a small bottle of water. She handed him a pill. "Take it now." "Marielle." "Take it now, Arthur." He took it. She watched him swallow. She watched the color come slowly back to his face. She let out a breath she had been holding for 2 hours. Across the terminal, a woman was pushing a cleaning cart. She had dark hair streaked with silver, a round face, tired eyes, a name tag pinned to her uniform, Rosa. She rolled the cart past them once. She did not slow down, but her eyes moved. Across Marielle, across Arthur, across the suitcases, across Scout. She kept moving. Then she came back. She stopped the cart. She pretended to wipe a smudge off the window 2 feet away from them. She did not look at them when she spoke. "You folks all right?" "We're fine," Arthur said. Too quickly. Rosa kept wiping. "My mistake." She moved on, but she rolled the cart slowly, and 10 feet later she stopped. And 10 feet after that, she paused again. Marielle watched her. She was a woman. She knew. Some women always know. Marielle stood up. She walked over. "Excuse me." Rosa straightened. "Yes." "I'm sorry. We are not all right." Rosa nodded. Once. "I know. Is there somewhere we could sit for a while? Somewhere warm, where they will not ask us to leave?" Rosa looked at her for a long second. Then she said, 3 blocks east. Sonny's Diner. Open all night. Tell Miguel that Rosa sent you. He will let you sit. He will let the dog stay if you keep him under the table." "Thank you." Rosa shook her head. "My mother was your age. She would have left him too, if she had been brave enough." She turned. She kept pushing her cart. She did not look back. Marielle went back to Arthur. "Come on," she said. "We are going to a diner." Sonny's was the color of weak coffee and old vinyl. A long counter. 6 booths. A jukebox that had not worked in 19 years. A faded poster of Frank Sinatra peeling at the corner. A small Mexican man behind the counter looked up when they walked in. "You must be Rosa's." "Yes." "Booth in the back. Dog stays under the table." "Thank you." He nodded. He poured 2 coffees without being asked. They slid into the booth. The booth was warm. Marielle realized she had been cold for a very long time. Not just tonight. For weeks. For months. Cold in her ribs. Cold in her hands. Cold in the small space behind her sternum, where the part of her that had stopped being herself had been living for half a year. She wrapped her hands around the coffee mug. She breathed in the steam. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt something almost like rest. The bell over the door jangled. A big man came in. He was tall, maybe 6'2", built like a barn, late 60s, gray hair cut close to his scalp, a flannel shirt under a heavy canvas coat, boots that had walked a lot of miles. He sat at the counter. He did not look at the menu. Miguel poured him a coffee. "Eggs, Lionel." "Eggs." "How's your mother?" "Hanging on." "You're bringing her down with you next week." "I'm bringing her down tonight." Miguel paused. "Tonight." "Tonight? You sure?" "I'm sure." Miguel nodded. He went to crack eggs. The big man wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. Marielle was watching him. She did not know she was watching him until Arthur nudged her gently. "Marielle." "What?" "You're staring." "I'm not staring." "You are." "I am not." But she was, because the big man's hands were shaking just slightly, the way Arthur's hands shook in the morning before his coffee, the way the hands of men who carry too much do. She looked away, but the big man had felt it. He turned his head, slowly. He looked at her. He looked at Arthur. He looked at the 2 suitcases beside them and the old golden retriever under the table. He did not say anything. He turned back to his coffee, but 3 minutes later he picked up his mug. He picked up his plate of eggs. He stood up, and he walked over to their booth. "Mind if I sit?" Arthur glanced at Marielle. Marielle nodded. "Please," she said. The big man slid into the booth across from them. He set down his coffee. He put out his hand. "Lionel Brennan." "Arthur Whitlock. My wife Marielle." "Pleasure." He nodded at Scout. "Good dog." "He's old." "So am I." A small silence. Then Lionel said, "Rosa told Miguel. Miguel told me. So I'm going to ask you straight. Where are you headed?" Arthur opened his mouth. He closed it. Marielle answered for both of them. "We don't know." Lionel nodded. He took a bite of his eggs. He chewed. "I'm headed east," he said. "Drive a truck 3 days a week. Just got my mother out of a place. Picked her up from Birchwood Manor an hour ago. She's in the truck right now, sleeping. I'm taking her home with me. Decided I couldn't leave her there another night. She kept asking for her own kitchen. 6 months. 6 months of her asking, and I kept telling her she couldn't have one, until last Tuesday." Marielle was very still. "What happened last Tuesday?" "She forgot my name." Lionel set down his fork, and I realized. She didn't forget my name because she's losing her mind. She forgot my name because nobody had said her name to her with love in 6 months. Because the people in that place, they are kind. They are very kind. But they don't know her. They don't know she used to play violin in a community orchestra. They don't know she once met Eleanor Roosevelt at a charity dinner in 1957. They don't know she lost a baby boy in 1962 and never spoke of him out loud and only ever sang him a lullaby in her own head. He looked at Marielle. They don't know her. and without her name being spoken with love. Her mind couldn't hold on to anyone else's name either. Marielle felt tears come up. Because that was the truest thing anyone had said about old women in a very long time. Lionel kept going. So I'm taking her home. I'm cutting my roots in half. I'll figure out the money. I'll figure out the rest. I'm not leaving her there. He took a sip of coffee. He looked at them again. Now you two. You're not headed anywhere. But you can't stay here. So I'm going to make you an offer. I'm driving east in 40 minutes. 4 hours up the road, there's a little town called Cedar Hollow. My mother lives there. I bought her a little house years ago. The diner there is run by a woman named Pearl Donovan. Pearl is the best person I know. She is 68 years old. She is sharp as a tack. She has been looking for help for 2 years, and nobody comes to Cedar Hollow because nobody knows it exists. You ride with me. I'll drop you at her door. What you do after that is your business. Arthur stared at him. Why? Lionel looked at his hands. Because in 1971 I was overseas, and on a hill there was a woman, older than my mother now. She gave me water. She gave me a piece of bread. She did not know my language. I did not know hers. But she gave me water, and I went home. And she did not. And I have been trying to pay her back for 50 years. And tonight you two look like the bill. He picked up his fork. He went back to his eggs. Arthur looked at Marielle. Marielle looked at Arthur. She did not need to say anything. He nodded. 4 hours east, she said. 4 hours east, Lionel said. He kept eating. Outside, the first wet flakes of an early snow began to drift past the diner window. The truck was warm. Marielle sat in the middle. Arthur on her right. Lionel driving. Scout in the back with Lionel's mother. The old woman was tucked under a thick wool blanket, snoring softly, her hand resting on Scout's neck like he was a dog she had known her whole life. The dashboard glowed amber. The road unspooled into the dark. Lionel did not talk much. He did not need to. Marielle rested her head against Arthur's shoulder. She closed her eyes. She did not sleep, but she let go. A little. The countryside changed. Suburbs gave way to farmland. Farmland gave way to forest. The forest deepened. The road climbed gently into hills. By dawn, they were in a different world. A world where the sky was bigger, where the trees stood close together like they were holding hands, where a town suddenly appeared in a small valley. Cedar Hollow. Population 847. A wooden sign on the edge of town. Hand-painted, slightly crooked. The letter R fading. Lionel turned onto Main Street. Brick buildings 2 stories tall. A courthouse with a small white dome. A church with a steeple. A square with a wrought iron gazebo. A row of storefronts, some with 4 lease signs in the windows, some still open. And at the end of the row, a small diner, Pearls, painted in dark blue letters on a hand-lettered sign. Lionel pulled up to the curb. He killed the engine. He turned to Marielle. Pearl knows I'm coming. I called her at 4 in the morning. She's expecting you. You called her in the middle of the night. She told me to. Marielle looked at him. What did you tell her? I told her 2 good people needed a soft landing. And she said, bring them. Marielle pressed her lips together. She nodded. She squeezed his hand once. Lionel. Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just be kind to Pearl. She has been alone in that kitchen for a long time. He helped Arthur out. He helped with the suitcases. He kissed his mother's forehead in the back seat. He nodded once to Marielle. Then he drove away. and Marielle Whitlock, and Arthur Whitlock, and an old golden retriever named Scout stood on the sidewalk in front of a small diner in a town they had never heard of. The bell over the door jangled. Pearl Donovan was 68 years old. She had silver-streaked auburn hair pinned up in a bun, reading glasses on a beaded chain, a blue apron tied around her waist, strong hands, sharp eyes the color of slate. She looked them over once. She set down her coffee pot. She walked around the counter, and she opened her arms, and she hugged Marielle Whitlock like Marielle was a daughter coming home from a long war. Marielle did not know she was crying until Pearl handed her a paper napkin and said, "First we cry, then we have pie." The pie was strawberry rhubarb. Marielle ate 2 slices. Arthur ate 3. Pearl watched them eat. She poured coffee. She refilled water. She did not ask questions. When they were done, she sat down across from them. "You need work." "Yes." "You need a place to stay." "Yes." "I need a baker. Mine retired last month. I need someone who knows what they're doing in a kitchen at 5 in the morning. Marielle Lionel said you've been baking since you were a girl." "I have. Can you start tomorrow?" "I can start today." Pearl smiled. "Tomorrow is fine." She turned to Arthur. "Arthur, can you fix things?" "I can fix anything." "This building is 128 years old. Every door sticks. Every faucet drips. The back stairs creak in 3 places. The walk-in cooler hums like a sick cow. Do you have the patience for that?" "I do." "Good." Pearl stood up. "Come with me. I want to show you something." She led them through a small door at the back of the diner, up a narrow staircase, to a small landing, to a door with a brass knob worn smooth by 100 years of hands. She opened it. The apartment was small, but it was warm. A living room with a sofa and 2 armchairs, and a window that looked out over the town square. A kitchen with a yellow tile counter, and a coffee maker, and a small wooden table. A bedroom with a quilt on the bed and a pattern Marielle recognized. Double wedding ring. The first quilt every young bride learned to make in 1942. Marielle walked to the window. She looked out at Cedar Hollow, the square, the gazebo, the fading leaves, the 2 old men sitting on a bench outside the hardware store, the little boy running past with a stick. She put her hand against the cool glass. She did not turn around. She said very quietly, "How much is the rent?" Pearl said, $200 a month. Comes off your paycheck. Heat and utilities included. Dog welcome. Husband welcome. Tears welcome. Pie welcome." Marielle turned around. "Why?" Pearl looked at her. For a long second she did not answer. Then she said, "Because 32 years ago I was you, and the woman who took me in did not ask me why. And I promised her I would do the same when my time came. And honey, your time is now." Marielle nodded. She could not speak. So Pearl filled the silence. "Get settled. Take a nap. Come down at 4. I'll show you the kitchen. We open at 5:30. The whole town will be here for breakfast. Half of them will want to know who you are. The other half will pretend not to. I'll handle the first half. You handle the dough. Arthur, you handle the leaking pipe under the back sink. Deal?" "Deal," Arthur said. Pearl walked to the door. She paused. She turned back. "Marielle." "Yes." "You're safe here." And Marielle, who had not believed those 3 words from anyone in 6 months, almost believed them now. The first morning was hard. Marielle rose at 4. Her body did not know where it was. Her hands did not know where the bowls were. The oven was unfamiliar. The flour was a different brand. The yeast smelled different, but she made bread. She made cinnamon rolls. She made blueberry muffins. She made a small batch of biscuits, because Pearl said the loggers came in early and ate biscuits like they were going extinct. By 6 in the morning, the diner was full. Marielle watched from the kitchen pass-through. She watched men in flannel work shirts eat her bread. She watched a young mother with twin toddlers split a cinnamon roll 3 ways. She watched an old man sitting alone at the counter dip a biscuit into his coffee and close his eyes and chew slowly. The way a man eats when food is the only thing left that feels like love. Pearl came back to the kitchen. She put her hand on Marielle's shoulder. "They like you. They don't know me. They will." The days began to find a rhythm. Marielle baked. Arthur fixed. The pipes stopped leaking. The walk-in cooler stopped humming. The back stairs were renailed. The faucets behaved. Scout took up a position by the diner's front window. He became the unofficial greeter. The children brought him crusts of toast. The old men patted his head as they came in for coffee. A woman who had not smiled in 2 years smiled when Scout licked her hand. And Marielle began to come back to herself. She did not see it at first, because women like Marielle do not look in mirrors. They look at other people. They look at children. They look at husbands. They look at meat thermometers and breadcrumb and dishwater. But Pearl saw it. Pearl saw the way Marielle stood up straighter by the 3rd week, the way her laugh came back, the way she stopped flinching when a door slammed, the way she started humming over the dough at 4 in the morning. One night after the diner closed, after the chairs were up on the tables, after Arthur had gone upstairs to bed, after Scout had curled up on his blanket in the corner, Pearl poured 2 cups of tea. She set one in front of Marielle. She sat down across from her. "Marielle?" "Yes." "How are you sleeping?" "Better." "How are your hands?" "Better." "How is your heart?" Marielle paused. She wrapped her hands around the warm teacup. She did not answer. Pearl waited. Finally, Marielle said, "I don't know who I am anymore." Pearl nodded. "That's the beginning." "The beginning of what?" "The 3rd birth." Marielle looked at her. "What?" "The 3rd birth, Marielle. A woman is born 3 times in her life. The first time, when her mother brings her into the world. The second time, when she brings her own children into it. The third time, when she finally puts herself into her own arms and says, 'I am enough.'" Marielle stared at her. Pearl smiled. She sipped her tea. "You are at the 3rd birth, my friend. It is the loudest birth, and the quietest birth, and the one nobody warns you about, and the one nobody throws you a shower for. But it is the most important one, because it is the only one where the baby is you." Marielle started to cry. Not big tears, just slow ones, the kind that come from a place that has been locked for 50 years. Pearl reached across the table. She took Marielle's hand. She held it, and the 2 old women sat there in a quiet diner at the edge of a small, dying town. And the radio played softly, and the snow began to fall outside, and the 3rd birth began. The phone call came on a Tuesday. Pearl picked it up while Marielle was kneading a batch of dinner rolls. "Pearl's Diner." A pause. "Yes, this is Pearl." A longer pause. Marielle did not look up, but she heard Pearl's voice change. Sharpen. The way a knife sharpens against stone. "No, I don't know anyone matching that description." A pause. No. Elderly couple with a golden retriever. We get truckers through here. We get hunters. We don't get city folks." A pause. "Mister, I run a small diner in a small town. I would remember. The answer is no." A pause. "You have a good day." She hung up. Marielle had stopped kneading. Pearl did not look at her right away. She just stood there, her hand on the phone, her shoulders set. Then she turned around. "Marielle." "Yes." "That was a private investigator. From the city. He's looking for a couple matching your description. Said the family is, quote, very concerned about their well-being." Marielle's hands gripped the edge of the counter. "What did you say?" "I said no." "He'll keep looking." "He will." "He might come here." "He might?" "Pearl." "Yes." "You don't have to." "Marielle." "You don't have to lie for us." Pearl walked across the kitchen. She put her hands on Marielle's shoulders. She looked her dead in the eye. "Marielle Whitlock, I will lie for you to every private investigator in the lower 48. I will lie for you to your daughter-in-law. I will lie for you to the President of the United States if he comes through that door asking. Do you understand me?" Marielle nodded. Pearl squeezed her shoulders. "Now finish those rolls. Dinner rush is in 2 hours." And just like that, the whole town knew. Pearl did not tell them. She did not have to. Cedar Hollow was 847 people. Cedar Hollow knew when a stranger came through. Cedar Hollow knew when somebody asked questions at the gas station. Cedar Hollow knew when an unfamiliar car parked outside the library for 40 minutes. A man came through 3 weeks later. He had a clipboard. He had a smooth voice. He had the kind of jacket that did not belong in Cedar Hollow. He went to the hardware store first. He asked about an elderly couple. White, late 70s, possibly traveling with a dog. The hardware store owner, a man named Wilkins, looked at him. He scratched his chin. He said, "Nope." The investigator went to the post office. He asked about new arrivals. Mail forwarded from the city. The postmistress, a woman named Hattie, looked at him. She said, "We don't release that kind of information on." He went to the gas station. He went to the library. He went to the church. He went to Pearl's diner. He came in just after lunch. He sat at the counter. He ordered coffee. He pulled out a small photograph. Marielle was in the back, kneading bread. She did not see him. She did not know. Pearl glanced at the photograph. It was a picture of Marielle and Arthur, sitting at Bennett's kitchen table, smiling. 6 months ago. Pearl looked at it for a long second. Then she looked at the man. "Nope, never seen them." "You sure?" "I'm sure. They might be using different names. They could be using Frank Sinatra's name. They have not been in my diner." She poured his coffee. She walked away. The man drank his coffee. He paid his bill. He left a small tip. He drove out of town. He did not come back. Cedar Hollow did not speak of it. But that night, 3 different people brought Marielle a small jar of jam, a cluster of late-season apples, and a quilted pot holder. They did not say why. They did not have to. Marielle sat on the small sofa upstairs that evening. She held the pot holder in her lap. She wept. Arthur held her. He did not speak. He did not need to. The box arrived in November. Lionel brought it. He came through Cedar Hollow on his shorter route now. He stopped at the diner once a week. He had coffee and pie and asked Marielle how her grandchildren would have liked the cookies that morning. This Tuesday, he came in with a cardboard box. "A friend of mine drives a moving truck out of the city," he said. "He's done jobs for that company before. The one that handled your son's house when you moved in. He poked around. He found this in storage. Said it didn't have anyone's name on it. Said it might be yours." He set the box on the counter. Marielle opened it. Inside were envelopes. Hundreds of envelopes. All addressed to her. All in the same handwriting. Cordelia. Marielle's hands began to shake. She lifted the top envelope. Postmarked 4 years ago. Unopened. She lifted the next one. Unopened. The next. Unopened. The next. Unopened. Letter after letter after letter. From her daughter in another country. Spanning 6 years. 6 years of letters. 6 years of a daughter trying to reach her mother. 6 years of a mother believing her daughter had forgotten her. Marielle sank into a chair. Pearl came over. Arthur came over. Lionel stood back. He understood that some moments do not belong to outsiders. Marielle opened the oldest letter. She unfolded the page. She read, "Mom, I haven't heard from you in months. I'm worried. I keep writing. I keep waiting. Are you all right? Please write back. Please call. I love you so much. Cordelia." She opened another. "Mom." The baby took her first step. "I wish you were here. I sent photos. Did you get them? I miss you." Cordelia. Another. "Mom, please tell Dad I love him. I haven't been able to reach the house. Bennett told me Sloan handles all the mail now. Is everything okay there?" Cordelia. Marielle could not see the page anymore. The tears would not stop. Arthur knelt beside her. He took her hand. "Marielle, she wrote to us. She wrote to us. She did not abandon us, Arthur. She did not abandon us. Sloan, I know. Sloan took our daughter from us. I know, Marielle. She took our daughter." She doubled over. Arthur held her shoulders. She cried for a very long time. When she could finally speak, she lifted her head. "Pearl." "Yes, honey. I need to call my daughter." The first snow fell hard in early December, a foot in one night. Marielle woke to a world made of white. She came downstairs early. She started the bread. She fired up the ovens. The kitchen smelled of yeast and butter and possibility. Arthur came down at 7. He kissed her cheek. "I'm going to clear the walk before the breakfast rush." "Arthur, it's not bad. Pearl has the shovel by the back door." "Take your time. Your hip." "My hip is fine." "Arthur," he smiled. "My hip is fine, Marielle. I am a man with 8 screws in my hip. Snow does not scare me." He kissed her again. He went outside. Marielle kept baking. 12 minutes later, Pearl ran into the kitchen. "Marielle." "What?" "Outside." "What?" "Arthur." Marielle dropped the spatula. She ran. Arthur was on his knees in the snow. The shovel had fallen at an angle. His hand was clutching the front of his coat. His face was the color of the snow itself. Arthur. He could not speak. He was trying to breathe. He was trying. He could not. Marielle went down beside him in the snow. She gripped his shoulders. She held his face. "Arthur. Arthur, look at me." His eyes found hers. They were terrified. She had not seen his eyes like that since the day Calvin's flag had come through the door. "Stay with me. Stay with me, Arthur. Pearl is calling." "Pearl, Pearl." "Ambulance is on the way," Pearl said. She was already on the phone. Marielle could not feel the snow on her knees. She could not feel her own hands. She could only feel Arthur, his chest, the thinness of him, the frailty under the heavy coat, his pulse under her thumb, fast, then slow, then fast. He was crying. She had not seen him cry like this since the day they buried their son. "Marielle, don't talk. Don't talk, Arthur. Marielle, please. I'm sorry." "For what? For what, Arthur?" "For not protecting you sooner." She held his face. She pressed her forehead to his. "Arthur Whitlock, you listen to me. We are not done yet. Do you hear me? Sloane does not get to win. She does not get the last word. We are not done. Stay with me. Stay with me." The sirens were coming. Marielle could hear them now, down Main Street, getting closer. She held him. The whole town came to the diner that day. They did not eat. They did not order. They just came. They sat in the booths. They stood by the windows. They waited. Lionel drove an hour and a half from the next town over. He brought his mother in the truck. He brought her inside. He set her at a booth. Pearl stayed beside Marielle at the hospital. She did not say one word for 3 hours. She just sat there, holding Marielle's hand. The doctor came out. A young woman, maybe 40, tired but steady. "Mrs. Whitlock." "Yes." "Your husband had a mild heart attack." Marielle closed her eyes. "He is stable. We caught it early. The damage is minimal. He will need to slow down. He will need medication. He will need to not shovel snow for the rest of his natural life, but he will be all right." Marielle let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Thank you. He's asking for you." She went to him. He was lying in a hospital bed, pale, an IV in his arm, a monitor beeping softly. He smiled when he saw her. "Hi, sweetheart." "Arthur, I'm all right. I know." She sat down beside the bed. She took his hand. She brought it to her lips. She kissed his knuckles. And she said something she had not said in 20 years. She said it because she meant it. She said it because it was true. She said it because she had walked through fire to find it again. "Arthur Whitlock, I love you, and I will not let anyone take our peace again. Not Sloane, not the cold, not a roof, not a shovel, not a heart attack, not anything. Do you hear me?" He squeezed her hand. "I hear you, Marielle." Outside the window of the small hospital room, the snow kept falling, soft, patient, endless, like a town, holding its breath, for 2 old people who had finally found their way home. Arthur came home from the hospital 4 days later. He was thinner, paler, slower, but he was Arthur. Pearl had moved his recliner upstairs, the good one, the brown leather one she had bought for her late husband in 1989 and never sold. She had hauled it up 2 flights of stairs with the help of Lionel and a teenager named Mason from the hardware store. She set it by the window. She said, "Now you have a throne, Arthur Whitlock." Arthur sank into it. He let out a long breath. He looked out at Cedar Hollow, snow on the gazebo, Christmas lights going up on the corner of Main and Elm, a little boy in a red hat pulling a sled past the diner. Arthur closed his eyes. He said very softly, "Marielle." "Yes. I am alive." "You are." "I did not think I would be. I know. And I am alive in a town I had never heard of, in a chair I have never owned, next to a wife who has never been more beautiful." Marielle laughed. A real laugh. The first one in months. "You are flirting with me, Arthur Whitlock, from a recliner, after a heart attack." "I am." "You are a ridiculous man." "I am." He took her hand. He kissed it. The snow kept falling outside the window. The days after the hospital settled into a softer rhythm. Marielle still baked. Arthur did not. The doctor had been very clear. No shoveling, no lifting, no standing too long, no skipping pills, no pretending. So Arthur sat by the front window of the diner in the afternoons, with a book in his lap, with a cup of weak coffee that Pearl refilled without being asked. And the town of Cedar Hollow paraded past him. Every regular stopped to say hello. The mailman tipped his cap. The schoolteacher waved through the glass. The retired plumber sat down with him 3 times a week and talked about gun dogs and tomato seedlings and an old movie they had both seen in 1972. Arthur began to smile again. Not the polite smile, not the brave smile, the real one. The one Marielle had not seen since before Calvin's flag. And one evening, after the diner closed, after the dishes were done, after Pearl had gone home, after Scout had fallen asleep in his usual corner, Marielle stood at the window of the apartment upstairs. She looked down at the empty street. She put her hand against the cold glass, and she allowed herself to think a thought she had not let herself think yet. We made it. We actually made it. Then she heard Arthur's voice from behind her. Marielle. Yes. Come sit with me. She turned around. He was in the recliner, a blanket over his lap, the radio playing something old, something with a saxophone. She walked over. She sat on the arm of the chair. He put his hand on her knee. He said, Thanksgiving is next week. I know. Pearl wants to do a big dinner. Strays and family. Open table. Anyone who has nowhere else to be. I know. She wants you to make the pies. I know. Arthur looked up at her. Marielle. Yes. I miss them. She knew who he meant. She knew without him saying. She put her hand on his cheek. I know. Do you think Bennett will ever come? She did not answer right away, because she did not know, because the truth was, she had been thinking about her son every single day. Every time she put a tray of cinnamon rolls in the oven. Every time she heard a small voice at the diner counter. Every time the bell over the door jangled and a stranger walked in and was not him. Bennett, her boy, the one who had climbed every tree on Maple Avenue, the one who had let his wife steal his backbone. I don't know, Arthur. I know. He may never come. I know. And if he does, yes, I do not know if I can forgive him, Arthur. Arthur nodded. He did not push her. He just held her hand. The storm hit on a Tuesday, the biggest of the year, 20 inches predicted, maybe more. The roads closed by 10 in the morning. The schools sent kids home early. The plows fought a battle they were losing. Marielle kept the diner open anyway, because that was what Pearl did. Pearl had not closed the diner for weather in 41 years. By 2 in the afternoon, the snow was up to the windowsills. By 3, the wind was bending the street lamps. By 4, there were only 3 customers in the whole place. A truck driver eating chili, a woman from the post office reading a paperback, and an old man named Floyd who came in every day at 3 and stayed until Pearl made him leave. Marielle was at the counter wiping down menus. The bell over the door jangled. A blast of cold air, a swirl of snowflakes. A man stepped inside. He was tall, thin. His coat was wrong for the storm. Cashmere, city coat, now soaked through and covered in white. His boots were leather, the kind that look good and are useless in real weather. He had a salt and pepper beard. He had hollow eyes. He had been crying. Marielle did not recognize him at first. Because the man she remembered, the boy she remembered. He had been the most beautiful boy on Maple Avenue, with dark hair like a crow's wing, and brown eyes that crinkled when he laughed. This man looked like a ghost of that boy. Bennett. She did not mean to say it out loud. She just did. He took one step toward her. Then he stopped. He stood in the middle of Pearl's diner in his ruined cashmere coat with snow melting in his hair, and Bennett Whitlock, 46 years old, dropped to his knees on the black and white checkered floor. He did not speak. He just bowed his head and put his hands flat on his thighs and shook. Marielle did not move. Pearl came out of the kitchen. She stopped. She looked at Marielle. She looked at the man on the floor. She backed away slowly. She gave them the diner. The 3 customers had all stopped chewing. Floyd set down his coffee cup. The truck driver put down his spoon. The post office woman closed her paperback. They sensed it, the way old animals sense lightning before it strikes. Without a word, they got up. They paid their checks. They put on their coats. They left. The diner emptied. It was just Marielle and Bennett and a clock on the wall and the snow. She did not go to him. She did not, because something in her would not let her, because the part of her that had been a mother her whole life wanted to fly across that floor and pull her boy into her arms and rock him like he was 4 years old again, like he had fallen off his bicycle, like he had had a bad dream. But the other part, the newer part, the part that had been born somewhere on a bus bench at 2 a.m, that part did not move. That part needed to hear him say it first. Bennett finally lifted his head. His face was wet. Mom. Bennett. Mom, Take off your coat. He blinked. What? Take off your coat, Bennett. It is wet. You will catch cold. Hang it on the hook by the door. He stared at her. Yes, Mom. He stood up. Slowly. He took off the coat. He hung it on the hook. He stood there for a long second with his back to her. Then he turned around. Come sit, she said. Mom. Sit down, Bennett. He came to the counter. He sat on a stool, 3 feet from her, across the laminate. He looked at his hands. He looked at his mother. He started to cry again. And Marielle Whitlock, the woman who had cried in a kitchen full of newspapers and broken china, the woman who had not cried since she had run out the side door of a house on Oak Ridge Drive at midnight 6 months ago. She did not cry now. She poured him a cup of coffee. She slid it across the counter. She said, Talk. He started slowly. I left her mom. When? 2 months ago. Why? Because I found out. Found out what? All of it. A pause. I found the notebook. Marielle's hand was very still on the counter. Where? In her closet. After she left for a trip. I was looking for tax papers. I found the notebook. I sat on the floor of her closet, and I read it. All of it. Every page. Pause. I read what she wrote about you. About Dad. I read what she wrote about my children. There were pages about the children, Mom. Pages where she was logging things to use later. Things they had said. Things they had drawn. She was building. She was building cases. Multiple cases. Pause. And then I went into the attic. Because the attic was always locked. And she always said it was just storage. And I had not been up there in 3 years. Pause. I broke the lock. Marielle did not breathe. I found 6 boxes of letters from Cordelia. 6 boxes, Mom. Going back 6 years, birthday cards she never gave me, photographs of my niece I have never seen, a letter from Cordelia when her husband had cancer. Cordelia's husband had cancer, Mom, 3 years ago. He survived, but she wrote me 3 letters during the treatment. I never saw a single one. Marielle's jaw was clenched so tight she could feel her teeth. And then I found the bank statements. What bank statements? From an account she opened in 2021. In her name only. She moved $58,000 into it from our joint savings. Over 3 years. A little at a time. Money from my shop. Money from the proceeds when you sold your house. The money that was supposed to save us. Marielle closed her eyes. She has been stealing from me, Mom. From all of us. For years. Pause. And I missed it. I missed every single sign. Because I had stopped looking. Because I had stopped being a man. Because I had let her become the only voice in my head. And I am so. I am so sorry. I am so sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. His shoulders shook. He could not look up. The diner was very quiet. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. Marielle waited. She waited until the worst of it had passed. Then she said, "Bennett." "Yes." "Look at me." He lifted his face. "Bennett, I'm not going to tell you that I forgive you." He nodded. "Not yet." "I know. But I'm going to tell you that I love you. Because you are my son. And nothing changes that. Not a notebook. Not an attic. Not a locked door. Not 8 years of silence. You are my son. And I love you." He covered his face with his hands. She did not move from her side of the counter. "And I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hear what you say. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to take time. I'm not going to pretend this away. I'm not going to make it easy for you. Because what was done to your father and me was not easy, and the way forward will not be easy. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mom." "Good." She poured him more coffee. She slid the cup across the counter again. She said very quietly, "Now, where are my grandchildren?" Bennett looked up. He almost smiled. "In the truck." "In the truck? With Cordelia?" Marielle's whole body went still. "What did you just say?" "Cordelia is here. She flew in 3 days ago, as soon as I told her. She came. She is in the truck with the kids. We have been driving for 14 hours. We had to stop twice for the storm. We almost did not make it the last 50 miles. The roads are bad." Marielle walked around the counter. She walked past him. She walked to the front door. She did not put on a coat. She opened the door. The snow blasted her in the face. She did not feel it. She stepped out onto the sidewalk. A black SUV was parked at the curb. The back door opened. A little girl in a red hat, dark braids, brown eyes the size of saucers. "Grandma." June. June saw her grandmother standing in the snow with no coat on, and she did not wait for help with her seatbelt. She climbed over it. She fell out of the truck. She landed in the snowbank. She got up. She ran. She ran the way only a 5-year-old running to a grandmother she has not seen in 6 months can run. She slammed into Marielle so hard they both almost fell. Marielle did not feel her own knees. She did not feel her own ribs. She did not feel her own face. She felt only her granddaughter pressed against her chest. The small hot weight of her. The breath of her. The smell of her hair. "Grandma." "My June. My June. My June." A second door opened. A small boy, a blue snowsuit, a wooden chickadee clutched in his mitten, Silas. He came more slowly, watchful, the way he always was. He walked through the snow with serious purpose. He stopped in front of Marielle. He held up the wooden chickadee. He said, "I kept him safe, Grandma." Marielle knelt. She gathered him into her arms. She said into his hair, "I know, baby. I know you did." And behind the children, from the passenger seat of the truck, a woman was getting out. She was tall, slim. Her hair was the color of dark honey. She had Arthur's hands. She had Marielle's eyes. She was 41 years old. Marielle had not seen her in 7 years. Cordelia walked through the snow. She did not run. She walked. The way a woman walks when she has been waiting for a moment for so long that she does not trust her own legs. She stopped 2 feet from her mother. She did not speak. She did not have to. Marielle let go of the grandchildren. She stood up. She took 1 step. She put her hands on her daughter's face. Cordelia broke. The 2 women held each other in the falling snow on the sidewalk in front of Pearl's Diner in a small town named Cedar Hollow. And the wind was loud, and the storm was bad, and the world was cold, and the snow was getting in their hair, and neither of them moved for a very long time. The next morning, the storm had broken. The town was buried. The roads were closed until noon. The plows had not yet made it down Main Street. Pearl opened the diner anyway. She fed everyone. Bennett, Cordelia, June, Silas, Arthur, Mariel, Lionel and his mother, Floyd, Edith the postmistress, the truck driver, the plumber, Mason from the hardware store, 2 strangers passing through who had been stuck overnight at the motel. She made pancakes for 16 people. She did not charge anyone. Marielle watched her daughter cut up Silas's pancakes into small squares. She watched June feed Scout small bits of bacon under the table. She watched Bennett, sitting quietly, not eating, just watching his children. She watched Arthur in his recliner. Pearl had wheeled it down to the diner floor with the help of 2 truckers. Arthur was holding a coffee in both hands. He was smiling. He was just smiling. Marielle pressed a hand against her own heart. She did not know yet how the rest of the story would go. She did not know how she would feel about Bennett next week, or next month, or next year. She did not know if she would ever fully trust him again. She did not know what would happen with Sloane. She did not know how to think about any of it. But she knew this. For the first time in a long time, her family was in one room, and nobody was watching her with a notebook. The woman came 3 days later. Bennett and the children and Cordelia were still in Cedar Hollow. Bennett had taken a room at the inn down the street. Cordelia had taken the spare bedroom over Pearl's. The children went back and forth. It was a Friday morning. Marielle was kneading dough. The bell over the front door jangled. Pearl looked up. A woman stood in the doorway. She was maybe 40, maybe 42. Thin, pale, brown hair pulled back, a gray wool coat, a scarf wound twice around her neck, her boots wet from the slush. She did not look like a customer. She looked like a person who had been crying for 2 days. She stepped inside. She stood by the door. She said, "I'm looking for Marielle Whitlock." Pearl set down her coffee pot. "Who's asking?" "My name is Marjorie." A pause. "I'm Sloane's sister." The diner went very still. Marielle walked out of the kitchen. Slowly. She was still wearing her apron. There was flour on her wrists. She stopped 6 feet from the woman. She looked at her. She did look a little like Sloane, around the eyes. But where Sloane's mouth was sharp, this woman's mouth was soft. Where Sloane's eyes were polished glass, this woman's were exhausted water. "You're Marjorie?" "Yes." "Sloane sent you?" "No. Sloane does not know I am here." A pause. "Sloane does not know I exist anymore. We have not spoken in 11 years. Marielle studied her. "Why are you here?" The woman took a breath. She said, "Because I should have come 15 years ago, and I did not, and another woman is dead because of it, and I will not let it happen again." Marielle felt something cold rise up in her. She gestured to a booth. "Sit." They sat. Pearl came over with 2 cups of coffee. She set them down. She did not stay. She gave them privacy. Marjorie wrapped her hands around her cup. She did not look up. She started to talk. "My mother was named Esther." A long pause. "She was 68 when she died. She was a nurse for 35 years. She raised us alone. Our father left when I was 9 and Sloane was 12. A pause. "My mother had a small house in Pennsylvania, and a small pension, and about $100,000 in savings, and a stamp collection my father had left behind that turned out to be worth more than the house." Marielle did not move. "When my mother was 65, Sloane moved her in, just like she moved you in. Sloane and her first husband had a big house, plenty of room. It seemed kind. It seemed generous." A pause. "It was not generous." Marjorie's hands trembled. "My mother began to fail. Slowly at first, forgetting names, misplacing things. Sloane started telling me my mother was losing it, that she was getting dangerous, that she was a fire risk, that she was a fall risk. I lived 4 hours away. I had 2 small children. I trusted my sister." Pause. "Sloane took my mother to a doctor." Pause. "The doctor was a friend of her husband's at the time. He wrote up a report. I never saw the report. I was told my mother had advanced dementia. I was told she could not live at home anymore. I was told that Sloane had found a place, a facility. It was nice. It was clean." Pause. "My mother was 68 years old. She had moments of confusion. She was not advanced. She was just tired and sad and lonely." Marjorie's tears began to fall. "They put her in the memory care wing. They locked the door. Sloane took over her finances. Sloane sold the house. Sloane cashed in the stamp collection. Sloane drained the savings into a trust she controlled." Pause. "I saw my mother twice in the next year. I lived too far. The kids were small. I was tired. I was a coward." Marielle was crying now too, silently. "My mother died alone in that facility, on a Tuesday, in March, 3 days before her 69th birthday. The nurse who called me said my mother had been asking for me by name for 3 weeks. The nurse said my mother had been sitting by the window every morning, watching for a car that never came." Marjorie covered her face. She cried for a long minute. Marielle did not speak. She let her cry. She did not know if she was capable of comforting this woman whose sister had tried to do to her what had been done to a woman named Esther, this woman who had not stopped it. But she also did not move away. She just sat there. Finally, Marjorie wiped her face. She said, "I came because Bennett called me last week." Marielle looked up. "Bennett. He found my number in an old letter from my mother, in a box in the attic. He called me 3 days ago. He told me what Sloane had done to you. He told me about the notebook, the doctor, the plan, and I knew immediately, because I had seen it before. because I had let it happen before. Pause. I did not let it happen again. I drove 11 hours. I'm going to testify, Mrs. Whitlock. I'm going to tell the police about my mother. I have the records. I kept everything. I never threw a single piece of paper away. I have 10 years of bank statements. I have my mother's medical files. I have the trust documents. I have the original report from the doctor. Pause. There is a name for what Sloan is. There is a name for what she has been doing her whole life. She did not just hurt you. She did this before. She will do this again. To someone. To anyone. Unless she is stopped. Marielle was very still. She thought of her son in his cashmere coat on the floor of the diner. She thought of the locked attic. She thought of the 6 boxes of letters. She thought of $900,000 and a notebook with her name at the top. She thought of an old woman in Pennsylvania, a woman named Esther, watching for a car that never came. She thought of how easily that could have been her. Marielle reached across the table. She put her hand over Marjorie's. She said, "Marjorie." "Yes." "Drink your coffee." Marjorie laughed, a small, wet laugh. "What?" "Drink your coffee. It will get cold, and then we will go to the police station together, because you should not have to walk in there alone. Do you understand?" Marjorie nodded. She picked up her coffee. Her hand shook, but she drank. The legal process took months. Marielle did not have the energy to follow every detail, but there were depositions. There were investigators. There were 2 separate jurisdictions. There were forensic accountants who traced money across years and accounts and trusts and shell companies. There was a warrant. There were charges, falsification of medical records, conspiracy to commit fraud, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. 2 counts. Dr. Elliot Mercer lost his license. He took a plea. He cooperated. He gave them everything. Sloan fought it for a long time, until she could not. The guardianship paperwork was vacated. The trust she had built for Marielle and Arthur's money was unwound. The money came back. Most of it. Not all. Some had been spent. Some was gone. But most. And there was Sloan's case. And there was the case of Esther. And there was the family court ruling about custody. Sloan had supervised visits only, twice a month, at a center. Marielle did not feel triumphant. She felt very tired. She did not feel sorry for Sloan, but she also did not feel like dancing on anyone's grave. What she felt, when she let herself feel it, was a slow, soft, sad ache. For her son, for her grandchildren, for a woman named Esther who had died watching for a car, for a girl named Marjorie who had been too scared to come, for a girl named Sloan who had grown up in a house where money was love and love was money, and who had never figured out the difference. That was not an excuse. But it was a sad thing. Marielle told Pearl one night, "I do not know how to feel about her." Pearl said, "You do not have to. You just have to be safe." Marielle said, "Is that enough?" Pearl said, "Honey, after what you have been through, safe is everything. Safe is the whole sky." Cordelia stayed for 2 weeks. Then she went back. To pack up her house, to talk to her husband, to make plans. She called Marielle every day, every single day, for the first time in 6 years. The first call from her own country, she said, "Mom, we're coming back." Marielle was at the kitchen counter, folding a kitchen towel. She stopped folding. "Cordelia, we are. My husband has a job offer in Chicago. It is not Cedar Hollow, but it is the same time zone. The girls can fly out for summers. I will drive up to see you once a month at least. I am tired of being far from my mother." Marielle sat down. She held the phone with both hands. She did not say anything for a long time. Cordelia said, "Mom, are you crying?" "I am not crying." "Mom, I am a little bit crying." "Mom, all right, I am crying." They both laughed. It was the first time Marielle had laughed on the phone with her daughter in 7 years. She did not want to hang up, but Cordelia said, "Mom, I will call tomorrow." "You will." "I will." "Cordelia." "Yes, Mom." "Cordelia, I am sorry." "For what?" "For believing you had forgotten me." A long silence. Then Cordelia said, "Mom, I never forgot you. Not one day, not 1 hour. You were in every kitchen I have ever had, in every dough I have ever rolled, in every song I have ever sung to my own daughter. You were always there. You were just behind a closed door I did not know existed." Marielle pressed her fingers against her mouth. "Goodbye, my Cordelia." "Goodbye, Mom." She hung up. She sat at the table for a long time. Then she got up, and she went to the oven, and she pulled out a perfect tray of cinnamon rolls. She did not burn them. She did not even almost burn them. The third birth was loud and quiet and slow. The bakery opened in March. It was Pearl's idea. Marielle almost said no. She almost said she was too old. She almost said it was too much. She did not say any of those things. She said yes. Pearl owned the small storefront next to the diner. It had been a candle shop. It had closed 2 years ago. The walls were lavender. The floors were old pine. The big front window faced east. It got morning sun. They painted the walls cream. They painted the door deep blue, the same blue as Pearl's apron. Arthur built the display cases himself. Slowly, with many breaks, with Marielle bringing him sandwiches and water and pills and reminders. He used the maple wood Lionel brought him from a small mill upstate. He sanded each board by hand. He oiled them himself. They glowed. Pearl named the shop. Marielle had been thinking about names for weeks. Pearl's, Marielle's, the Maple Avenue Bakery, the Cedar Hollow Bake Shop, the Whitlock. Every name felt wrong. Pearl finally said, "Marielle, there is only one name." "What?" "The third birth." Marielle laughed. "Pearl." "Yes. You cannot name a bakery the third birth." "Why not?" "Because nobody will know what it means. The right people will know what it means." Marielle looked at her. She looked at the cream walls. She looked at the blue door. She looked at her husband, slowly oiling a maple shelf. She looked at the morning sun coming through the east window. She said, "Okay, Pearl." The sign went up on a Sunday in late March, hand-lettered by Mason from the hardware store. Deep blue letters on a cream background. The third birth, underneath in smaller letters. A bakery for beginning again. The Christmas Eve after Sloane's first court appearance was the most beautiful Marielle could remember. Bennett had bought a small house on Spruce Street, 2 streets from the diner, a craftsman bungalow with a wide porch. He had put up a string of white lights along the eaves. He had put a small wreath on the door. He had not put a tree inside yet. He said he wanted to do it with the kids. The kids were spending the weekend with him. Cordelia and her family had flown out from Chicago for the holiday. They were staying at the inn. Cordelia's husband was sleeping off the flight. Their 2 daughters, twins, 9 years old, were learning to skate on the small frozen pond at the edge of town with June and Silas. Lionel was teaching them. He had been a hockey player in another lifetime. Pearl had hosted dinner, a long table at the diner, 22 people, strays and family alike. There had been a moment. just before the meal, when Pearl had stood at the head of the table, and she had raised her glass. She had looked at Marielle. She had said, "Friends, this year I would like to toast a woman who walked into my diner 10 months ago in the middle of the night with nothing but a suitcase and a dog, and who in those 10 months has rebuilt her life and helped me rebuild mine and taught half of you something you needed to learn, to Marielle." The whole table stood up. The whole table. Lionel, Mason, Edith, Floyd, the plumber, the schoolteacher, the mailman, Hattie, Lionel's mother, Cordelia, Cordelia's husband, the twins, June, Silas, Bennett, Arthur, Marjorie, Pearl. They lifted their glasses. They said her name. Marielle could not see them through her tears. She had not been able to speak. She had just sat there, holding Arthur's hand under the table and pressing the linen napkin to her eyes. Now it was almost midnight. The dinner was over. The guests had gone home. The diner was dark. The bakery next door was dark. The town was dark. Marielle was upstairs in the apartment. The Christmas tree she and Arthur had put up in the corner was glowing. 8 ornaments. That was all. They had not had time to collect more. 1 ornament for each year of the new life they had begun, Pearl said. There would be many more years. A small wooden chickadee Arthur had carved for the tree, a blue glass ball Bennett had given her, a salt dough star June and Silas had made together at school, a photograph in a tiny frame, Cordelia and her family on the porch in Chicago, a small ceramic cup Pearl had given her, with the 3rd birth painted on the side in tiny blue letters, a folded paper crane Marjorie had sent in a Christmas card, a miniature loaf of bread made of clay that Arthur had bought at the craft fair in November, and on top of the tree, where most people put a star, Marielle had put a small soft cloth angel. It had belonged to Calvin. Marielle sat on the sofa. The lights of the tree were the only lights in the room. Scout was asleep on the rug by the radiator, his old gold belly rising and falling slowly. He was 13 now. The vet said another year if they were lucky. Maybe 2. Maybe more if his spirit kept dragging his body along. Marielle watched him sleep. Then she heard footsteps. Arthur. Coming up the stairs slowly. He came into the apartment. He set down a small tray, 2 cups of tea, 2 cookies from the bakery, the ones Marielle had decorated to look like Christmas trees. He sat down beside her. He handed her the tea. "It is almost midnight," he said. "I know. Christmas Eve is almost over." "I know." They sat in the soft tree light. She leaned her head on his shoulder. She thought of the woman she had been a year ago, a woman who had been disappearing, a woman who had been growing smaller and smaller in a guest room in someone else's house, a woman who had been walking on her toes, whispering, apologizing for sounds she had not made. She thought of that woman. She wanted to reach back in time. She wanted to take that woman's hand. She wanted to tell her, "You make it. You make it. You make it." A man in a diner gives you 4 hours east. A woman with auburn hair opens her arms. A daughter writes you letters you finally get to read. A sister of your tormentor walks through a door and breaks your heart in the right direction. A son drops to his knees on a black and white floor. You make it. Just keep going. Arthur reached over. He took her hand. He kissed her knuckles. He said, "Marielle." "Yes." "What are you thinking about?" She did not answer right away. She watched the tree lights. She watched the snow falling slow and quiet outside the window. She watched Scout's belly rise and fall on the rug. She thought of Pearl's words, the very first time she had said them, on a quiet night with 2 cups of tea. A woman is born 3 times in her life. She thought of Bennett, asleep 2 streets away, in a small house he had bought himself, without anybody whispering in his ear. She thought of Cordelia, asleep at the inn, her twins curled against her side. She thought of June, in her grandfather's recliner downstairs at Bennett's house, wrapped in a blanket, probably refusing to go to bed. She thought of Silas, in a snowsuit, building a snow chickadee in the front yard that morning, with the wooden one tucked carefully into his coat pocket. She thought of a woman named Esther, who had not made it. She thought of a woman named Marjorie, who was finally beginning to forgive herself. She thought of a younger Marielle, the bride of 1973, the mother of 1979 and 1983 and 1987, the grieving mother of the early 2000s, the wife of a man who had fallen off a roof. She thought of all the women she had been, and she thought of who she was now, Marielle Whitlock, 72 years old, baker, wife, mother, grandmother, friend, survivor, woman of Cedar Hollow. She turned her face up to Arthur. She smiled, a small, tired, defiant smile. She said, "I used to think my life would end in someone else's living room." Arthur waited. "I thought I would die in a room with a guest towel monogrammed in someone else's initials. I thought my last meal would be almond milk and apology." He laughed, quietly. She squeezed his hand. She said very softly, "It turns out I was not at the end. No, I was at the beginning." Outside the window, the snow kept falling, soft, patient, endless. A clock chimed somewhere downstairs. 12 quiet notes. Christmas had come to Cedar Hollow, and the bakery on the corner of Main and Elm was dark, but its sign was visible in the soft glow of the street lamp. The Third Birth, a bakery for beginning again. And on the second floor, in a small apartment above a diner, an old man and an old woman drank their tea in the light of a Christmas tree, and a golden retriever slept on a rug, and the world kept turning, and the snow kept falling, and Marielle Whitlock, who had once believed she was finished, lifted her face to her husband's shoulder and closed her eyes. She was not finished. She was just getting started.